What would you like to see from a new camera? From any brand, from Nikon, Sony, Canon, Fuji, Panasonic? What could they do, if anything, to improve or make you want to buy a new camera? Because we've said for quite a while now that all modern cameras are really good. And some people say, well, they do more than most people need now. But is it that true? So recently I've been looking at, I'm always looking at other options, and I'm always curious about trying other brands. This is why this channel exists, really. Loz and I are curious about trying gadgets, gizmos, cameras, lenses, see how the intricacies work with each other. And it's about the user experience and how you have a repertoire with the camera and the things you're using. You're not going to get invested in something if it's uncomfortable to use. So I think that it's these details that make us want to buy or change our equipment now. So it's less about, this has better autofocus, or about slightly more megapixels. I think it's about your user experience. I've been looking at Sony cameras and lenses because they're significantly smaller and lighter than my current setup. And over a long day, like I've just done 2 full-day events, I've been carrying around this behemoth, the 51.2. And optically, it's amazing. Completely 100% happy with the razor sharp wide open. I love the compression. It gets the results I want. But carrying this around for 2 days is a mission. It feels like a marathon. So I have been I've got the 51.8 as well, and I switched to that at different times. And I'm filming now with the 51.4 because every different situation, I use 50mm the most. So every different situation has a different use case. I had a couple yesterday say to me, "Oh my God, that's a humongous lens, scary." Like, that's not the response I want, because I want to take candid photos, natural ones, or I don't want to get people uncomfortable. So I was looking at Sony options, and yet the Sony 51.2 is probably 25% smaller and lighter, if not more. And they've got the 51.4 GM. That's even more small. That's half the weight of this lens, and it's professional line. Because the 1.8 lens I have is really good, razor sharp, but it doesn't always have that compression that I like to create. The 1.4 isn't professional line. It doesn't have the coatings or the sharpness that I sometimes need. And so I've got like a plethora of lenses where maybe the Sony 51.4 would do everything I wanted it to. I looked into the Megadap adapter, but it's inconsistent. There's people that say it wavers in and out of focus, and it doesn't have the correct image corrections that the camera does a lot of work now for. So I decided against that. So I looked at Sony cameras. And it's interesting because in the current lineup, it seems like the Sony cameras on the mid-range are way behind on the specifications compared to Nikon. So Nikon actually, I think, are leading the way at the moment. I've been looking at Sony because they're smaller and lighter bodies. I like the look of the Sony A7R Mark 4 and 5. A 60 megapixel, has the same sensor as the Leica Q3, but a really slow readout. Yeah, so it's about 100 milliseconds response time from the sensor to the camera, to the card. That's really slow because the Z8 is 3.7 milliseconds. Amazing. And I think that doesn't affect just the jello effect in video. I think it affects everything. It reads the whole scene from autofocus and everything else. The Z6 III is 14.4 milliseconds, which is fantastic. But if I can get a Sony body, which is smaller and lighter, and the Sony lenses, which are smaller and lighter, are really powerful, then that's significant. I'm also intrigued about the autofocus ability, and I have been doing tallies of my events, and the ZF they're both really high. We're talking really good, excellent autofocus ability now. The ZF fails a lot more than the Z8. The ZF is my secondary camera, and I use different grips with it, which is filming now, but I use different grips to try and deal with the fiddliness of it, and it's quite narrow and thin, but heavy. So I'm looking at the Z6 III as a secondary camera, which would make sense because it's highly specification. has a faster readout. But I'm also looking at like a Sony A7R4, A7R5. So what would you like to see in a new camera? Well, flippy flappy screen. The Sony A7R5 has done it. They made the most perfect screen. So the Z8 has the tilt mechanism, which is really good because if you can look at high and low, really useful. But it doesn't fully articulate. So why don't every brand manufacturer do that? I do not know. I don't know if it's patented. Not sure. The megapixels. Well, 24 is enough for most things. Although I like to use prime lenses, and that's where more megapixels is really handy. So if I took a 35mm with a higher megapixel camera, you can crop in really far with a sharp lens, and you can make equivalent of 50 or 70 or even 85mm equivalent compositions when you can't get close enough or don't have time to get close enough. Of course, the compression changes. The Z8 is so powerful at making different compositions using one lens. It's fantastic. So I am tempted by like 60 megapixels, especially for wildlife, where you're never close enough. So I'm tempted by that. If they made a Z8 Mark II with 60 megapixels. And the screen and the EVF quality, so the electronic viewfinder, is good. But when I go back to my D700, the optical viewfinder, I do really enjoy that. You get used to it. If you use these electronic viewfinders, you get used to it and it's fine. There's no lag, or not much of a lag. And with the Z8, it's blackout free as well, which is great. But there's always room for improvement. The Sony cameras, for example, do have better EVFs. And when you're in difficult situations or fast-moving situations, I would prefer better EVF, I think. I wonder what Nikon thinks of the D700 popularity and this cult following that I'm part of as well. I love the D700, straight out camera images and look, which is really refreshing. I wonder how Nikon will incorporate that into new cameras. So I know the Z5 Mark II has a preset button switch on the top where you can choose your look. You can embed that into your photo straight away. And digital hot shoes would be nice. So like with this, I'm filming. I've got a cable that goes from my mic to the camera, and it's obscuring the camera screen that I'm looking at. It's just better. So electronic digital hot shoe, you don't have to have the cables. Again, some things like that make a little difference sometimes. I'd like to see RAW pre-capture. These do JPEG pre-capture, which is fine in some situations, but you just want to utilize the full power of the camera, don't you? So if they had RAW pre-capture for fast-moving events, wildlife, when you don't know when something's going to happen, having that option of RAW pre-capture is really good. Again, Sony A1 does that, I think. So yeah, at the moment, Nikon does have the winning lineup of second generation of cameras that are really good and popular, and the specifications are really high. I think Canon and Sony have now fallen behind, but that's because they're probably going to release new camera modules out soon, or this year or next year, which again will be better than Nikon's current lineup. See where they go, and what do you want out of camera? Do you want it to be more aesthetically pleasing, like the ZF, where it feels like a retro design? So, or is it just about lenses now? Do you want to see smaller, lighter lenses, more options of lenses, faster lenses that are smaller and lighter as well? Yeah, tell me what you think. Have you used Sony or Canon and think Nikon need to improve? Do you think? Let me know what you think anyway. See you next time.